Mr. Prime Minister, thank you so much for talking to DW. Yesterday, the UN General Assembly condemned the illegal annexations of territories in Ukraine by Russia, but Mongolia abstained, as it did in March when the UN General Assembly condemned Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Why did Mongolia abstain?
From the very beginning, Mongolia has held the position and policy that countries should resolve their issues in a peaceful way, by diplomatic means, with minimal damage to each other. It is clear that Mongolia stands against war and for peace. Our point of view is that it is better to approach the issue peacefully without dragging this war on. Because as the war drags on, every country in the world will pay and suffer. Especially in developing countries, the damage will be even greater. Civilians will suffer more. That is why Mongolia continues to express its position that the UN, the Security Council members and the G7 should resolve the issue through peaceful negotiations. That remains our position.
Thousands of Russians moved to Mongolia over the land border coming to your country. Is the war in Ukraine also therefore starting to become a domestic policy issue for Mongolia?
Yes, that is the situation at the moment. Many Russians and Russian Buryats, who belong to a Mongolic ethnic group, have arrived in Mongolia. Within the framework of our current laws and regulations, it is possible to stay in Mongolia for 30 days and extend that stay for another 30 days. Our government is working to ensure the safety of these people within that legal framework. As I said earlier, as long as the situation escalates, other countries will face the same issue. That is why I will repeat once again, I think that it is necessary to find a very good solution through peaceful means and turn this conflict situation into a situation of negotiation. In my opinion, Germany, which currently leads the G7, and our neighbour China can play a special role in this. I plan to talk with Chancellor Olaf Scholz about this as well. In general, the whole world will suffer if this situation continues and worsens, and developing countries will suffer especially. There is a risk that the world will face starvation, and there is a risk that the world will enter a severe energy crisis. That is why, of course, humankind stands against war. Let me repeat that I think it is the historic duty of today's world leaders, especially the United Nations, to resolve the situation through a consensual approach as much as possible, without resorting to nuclear weapons.
You're repeatedly saying that dialogue is needed. You are in contact with the Russian president. Do you think that he will change his mind just by talking to him or continue talking to him?
Of course, it is a tough situation. But today, humankind has no other choice. That's why influential world leaders, in particular the United Nations, must find a way to solve this situation by diplomatic means, without harming the lives of more people, the economies of countries, and the normal pace of life, without resorting to nuclear weapons. The world has been through more difficult times than this in the past. We have resolved and overcome these times. If this situation escalates further, then, for example, issues related to nuclear weapons might arise. Over the past 2 years, the entire world has been in a very difficult situation due to COVID-19. In addition, if this war situation continues indefinitely, no country in the world will benefit. The world will be in a very tough and tense situation. This will increase doubts about the UN and the current situation. So I think it is possible that this situation will become extremely difficult. That is why, of course, they are making a great effort. We see, understand, and support that. Therefore, I believe that if there is even a 1% chance for negotiations, it should be used. For some time before the war, it looked like conflict between Russia and Ukraine might erupt. However, I think that everyone was talking about it, but not enough steps were taken at the time. It was talked about, there were some critical voices. Some thought there would be no war, but it happened. Now we are at a point where we're discussing nuclear weapons. Some people think they will be used, and some people think they won't be used. But using weapons of mass destruction is not a joke. Using these weapons could wipe out the human race. Then, any discussions about economic growth, renewable energy, and extending our life on Earth will be futile. Because global warming is nothing compared to the destruction that weapons of mass destruction can cause. We must try to resolve this situation by peaceful means, make sure that we use any remaining space for negotiation, and make sure that we do it before resorting to nuclear weapons. This is an extremely important challenge for all heads of government around the world, as well as for the United Nations and the Security Council members who play a key role. It is a historic challenge. I want to add that UN Secretary-General Guterres paid an official visit to Mongolia last summer. I exchanged my views with the Secretary-General and we had a long discussion. Secretary-General Guterres told me this. Sometimes events like a hurricane happen in global geopolitics. It's happening now. It feels like a strong ocean wave hitting the rocks. But when the storm subsides, the rock remains the same, and the ocean remains the same. But many animals in the ocean are crushed under seashells, and boats in the sea might sink. So as I said earlier, if this situation continues, my biggest fear is that the entire world economy will collapse. And there is a risk of a lot more people dying of starvation around the world than are dying in the fighting itself. If this situation stirs up even more chaos, if the trust in governments weakens around the world because of it, then that might lead to utter chaos.
As Germany, as Western countries are trying to reduce their reliance on Russian oil and gas, there is a new project of delivering Russian gas via Mongolia from Russia to China. Is this project still planning to go ahead in 2024?
Energy dependency is an issue in Germany and Mongolia. It's becoming a global problem. So in order to get out of energy dependency, Mongolia has been implementing certain projects. We've come up with the goal of implementing joint renewable energy projects with Germany. The government of Mongolia has proposed a new recovery policy. It's a big policy to get out of economic dependency. Within the framework of this policy, we intend to implement large projects related to energy and industrialisation in cooperation with the government of Germany. For example, electric cars are the future. Germany is a leader in that industry. In this context, large-scale production of components used for batteries is possible in Mongolia. Therefore, there is the opportunity of establishing links and cooperating with Mongolia in that sector. For Mongolia, that would bring advantages in terms of energy independence and job growth. And for Germany, it is possible to cooperate with Mongolia on future electricity sources and automobile markets without depending on one country. Of course, we have not stopped the previously implemented projects. Before the situation between Russia and Ukraine, a gas pipeline from Russia to China through the territory of Mongolia was one of several big projects that we were looking into. You have to understand that the gas pipeline project is still at the research stage. Most importantly, China itself has to agree on the price. There is still no agreement on that matter. Now, research is looking into the following points. If the pipeline goes through Mongolia, which provinces of Mongolia it will cross, and how long it will be.
Mr. Oyun-Erdene, Prime Minister of Mongolia, thank you so much for this interview.
Thank you.